one of the things I've been asking people is, do you think it might be helpful just to take a step back and look at what we're really trying to get done, and then figure out how do we put our heads together to do that effectively? Because we can sit here and argue all we want, but until we actually do the work together, we're in trouble. I have tremendous hope. As I've been traveling around the state, one of the things that's really different about my job now, when I was teaching kindergarten, I wasn't traveling anywhere, except back and forth to school. But now I'm in lots of rooms like this, talking to citizens about how do we make public education the reality that it was meant to be? How do we make it free and hopeful for communities? There's a way to get that done by bringing us all together. And I really believe that that's what's living in communities everywhere, and that's what's living in rooms like this. And to the degree that we can come together, we can get that done.
Hi, I'm Terry Moe from Stanford University. Great to be here. You know, in this country we've been trying to reform the schools and significantly improve them for the past 30 years, ever since the nation at risk in 1983. Relatively speaking, today is a really exciting time. I mean, things are happening.
I can't hear you very well.
So,
you move the microphone towards you. Thank you, Dean.
All right. So, we're seeing many states passing laws that require that teachers be evaluated based on performance. Charter schools are growing in number. People are actually talking about trying to get bad teachers out of the classroom. You know, so I mean, these are exciting developments. Democrats, not all of them, but more than in the past by a long shot, like Gloria, like President Obama and Arne Duncan, like Cory Booker, Rahm Emanuel, have been standing up and saying, look, we're just not going to do this anymore. You know, we are going to stand up for children and do things that the unions don't like. And in the past, that didn't happen. And it is happening now. So, things are improving. Now, the downside is, it's been 30 years. And what? We're saying that teachers should be evaluated based on performance? This is like some kind of a joke. Right? Why didn't they do this 30 years ago? It's done everywhere else in the economy. Why isn't it done in the schools? Why are we now saying, yeah, we're going to hold schools accountable for actually teaching kids something? Why weren't they doing that before? You know, and so now we're trying to do it, and we're thinking, man, we're really making progress. This is pathetic.
Yes.
Right, it's really pathetic. So what we're doing, really, is making incremental progress. And that is good. But it is not great. So, I'm here to talk about a revolution that's actually coming. Because it's not coming from this stuff. This stuff is good, and I'm glad that it's happening. But there is a real revolution happening, and it's coming from technology. It's happening under the radar screen. Most people don't talk about it. But the fact is, there is a revolution in information technology that started some time ago. It is shaping the fundamentals of human society everywhere in the world. It's changing the way people do business, the way they interact with one another, the way they get information, the way they get knowledge. And it can't help but transform the way children learn, the way teachers teach, the way schools are organized, and it is going to revolutionize K-12 education, and it will revolutionize higher education too, not just in this country, but everywhere in the world. It is really going to happen, and nothing's going to stop it. This is a tsunami that is too big for anybody to stop. All right, so why is this a good thing? Well, what we've always really wanted is to have a personalized kind of education where every child can be treated as an individual. And ironically, a computer can do that. You know, you still need teachers, right? Flesh and blood teachers. But with a computer, the child is having a one-to-one interaction with the computer, or with algebra, or whatever it is. The computer is teaching that child, and that child is moving at her own pace through the material. If the child doesn't know something, the computer knows the child doesn't know something. The computer can give that child remedial help right then and go through the kinds of material that the child needs. The child can move through and at some point finishes the entire thing, right? It might take 5 months for that child to learn the first semester of algebra. It might take 5 weeks. Under the current system, that child sits in a chair for however many months it is to finish the semester. It's stupid, right? But with online learning, when the material is learned, it's over, and the child moves on. It's just such a beautiful thing, and we've never been able to do this before, and now we can do it, right? And this is just the beginning. That they're just starting to provide these kinds of software programs, but already they're incredibly powerful. Think of what they'll be like in 10 years or 20 years. It's amazing. Okay, also, this is a huge boost for social equity, because the computer doesn't care whether you're white or black, or male or female, or if you live in Detroit, right? You can have access to the best. This is unbelievable. Nothing like this has ever been true before. It's so exciting. It's going to change everything. And what this is really about is substituting technology for labor, right? And it's not getting rid of teachers. We still need teachers. We just don't need as many of them, because a lot of this can be done by computers, right? So I think in the future, kids will go to school, you know, and they'll take whatever, 70%, 8% of their coursework on the computer, but there will be teachers there, and they'll still have art and PE and music and those kinds of things, not on the computer probably. Right? But the computers will do a lot, and there will be a massive substitution of technology for labor, and technology is cheap, labor is very expensive, and this has huge implications for the cost and our ability to afford a quality education. And this is the kind of thing that has driven productivity in every industry throughout human history. But it's never affected education. Education has always been a teacher in front of a classroom, and if you talk to people at education schools, at least up until very recently, they'll say, well, it'll always be that way. No, it won't. It's not true anymore. Now we can do this. So this is the future. All right, what does it look like right now? Right now, there are virtual charter schools, and those charter schools can enroll kids anywhere in a state. And this is a source of huge dynamism. There are firms that are in this sector, and they are generating whole curricula. They run whole schools for whole states, and more smart people are getting involved in this. They're developing mind-blowing, innovative curricula, ways of doing this, and this is a field that is just taking off. Now there are 275,000 kids around the country who are in these virtual charter schools. There are also state-led virtual schools. These are agencies run by states, but some of the states have good ones. The Florida virtual school is just a beacon of innovation. It's huge. They have 300,000 enrollments per year. They're teaching lots of kids throughout Florida with AP courses and remedial education courses and whole curricula. They're unbelievable. They're doing consulting throughout the world and throughout the country. And the reason that thing, well, okay, I'll talk about why it exists later. I don't think either one of these is the path to the future. The future is going to be blended learning, I think, where you have schools that are, you know, people don't take a whole curriculum. at home, in their bedrooms. Most people don't want to homeschool their kids. They want their kids to go to school. So I think in the future, most kids will go to school. And when they're there, they'll take 80% of their coursework online, probably. There'll be teachers, there'll be other kids, and so on. And computers, then, will be an important part of it. Rocket ship, which is close by here, is now nationally renowned as a blended learning model. It has a constituency of kids who are, as far as I know, 100% low income. They're almost all Hispanic, and they're just beating the daylights out of all the other kids in San Jose in terms of test scores. And statewide, for that matter. Rocket ship has been a huge success. So they just got authorization for 20 more schools in the area. They run 7 right now. They're going to start 8 more in Milwaukee, and they plan to spread to 50 more cities. This is a huge thing, and I think the way of the future. All right, so I don't have much time left, 30 seconds exactly. So I'll just say these are huge developments, and as you might expect, they are being opposed. And the reason they're being opposed is that they are a threat to jobs. This is all about substituting technology for labor, and what the unions don't want is for technology to be substituted for labor. They want the education system to be as labor intensive as possible, right? And so they have done everything they can around the country to minimize the advance of technology, and they have been partially successful. As a result, this thing is going to be much slower than it would otherwise be, but the end result is going to be a total revolution. Thank you.
Now we're going to start the 5-minute rebuttal period, starting with Larry and then moving on down.
Okay, thank you. Very interestingly, when CTA posted on its website yesterday information about this event today, it referred to Terry, Gloria, and I as reformers with quotes around it. That, in other words, we're not really reformers. And then listen to Mr. Vogel talking, and I think I understand it, because I think Mr. Vogel, from what I understood him to say, is that we need more money in education. He talked about QEIA, the Quality Education Investment Act. I taught for, I should mention, 28 and a half years. Toward the end of my career, we got, we were the recipient of KIA money. And what we did is my school went out and got more assistant principals and counselors and deans and God knows what. We just had a bunch of adults working there. Unfortunately, the school really didn't get any better. Throwing money in a bad situation makes it a more expensive bad situation. That's why voting in Prop 30, and my guess is there's not one person in this room, or at least sitting out there, who voted for Prop 30. You got no change for your buck. What will change things, you want to hear reform, there's a lawsuit called Students Matter. And it's going to trial on January 27th of next year. And if this thing flies, and it's started by a venture capitalist right here in Silicon Valley by the name of David Welch, maybe some of you know or know of him, Students Matter would take tenure, seniority, and the dismissal statutes out of the Ed Code. It would not eliminate these things necessarily, it would throw it into each school district to make that decision. So school boards, which are pretty powerful entities now, will become even more powerful if the Students Matter case flies. The dismissal, I mean, you know, we talked about tenure and seniority. The dismissal statutes, it is impossible to get rid of a bad teacher in the state. My last principal I worked for, she just wouldn't even bother. And if she wanted to, she could send a lemon, as they're called, to another school, but then she's got to take that lemon, and she'd rather deal with the lemon that she knows than the lemon she doesn't know. Now, this is shameful. SB 1530, State Senator Alex Padilla tried to shorten the dismissal statutes a little bit. We all want due process. Nobody's against due process here, but what we have is undue process. It is impossible to get rid of a bad teacher and a pedophile, as some recent cases, unfortunate cases you probably know about. So if we can make it a little bit easier to get rid of some teachers, get tenure, and get seniority out of the ed code, you will see some real reform in California. Throwing more money at a failing situation is not going to do it. Thank you.
I want to thank all the panelists for their insights, and I look forward to further conversation. Whether we agree or disagree, I think it's important that we're in the same room. A couple of points. I agree with Larry that there's a very significant case, Vegeta versus California. This is the case that's going to go to trial in January. What I think is going to happen, having served in the belly of the beast of the legislature in Sacramento, change reform is not going to come out of Sacramento. Political moneyed interests. California Teachers Association is the most powerful war chest in California. And there's a very close tie to the Democratic Party. I've seen it firsthand. Until Democrats finally have the backbone to stand up and say, we're not going to be led just simply because the money goes this way. We're going to put kids first. We'll keep seeing the squashing of legislation that we need to see in California, but right now can only be achieved via the courts. So that the third branch of government, which is of course the courts, is going to play a very important role as we go forward. With respect to the legislature, I do recognize that the teachers' union is not alone in blocking a reform. I would throw in the administrators, the superintendents, the school districts, which basically collect. I mean, kids are like debit cards, little button seat. They are the cha-ching that brings money into the district, and they don't want to rock the boat. The classified union. So as I sat in Sacramento and tried to push forward reform, I mean, Dean, I'm encouraged by what you have to say today, but I also think we can't just step back. We've been stepping back, as Terry said, for decades. Read A Nation at Risk, as Terry urged you to do, it's the same thing as today. So we don't have the time to step back. Even the encouraging progress of Kia, Dean, you mentioned 6 years. What kid spends more than 6 years in a particular branch of schooling? I mean, 6 years is more than the shelf life of a kid. So telling a parent to just step back and wait, it's not going to happen anymore. We need the urgency of now. I also think when I saw in Sacramento, I saw every reform, no, 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 no. In terms of looking at LIFO, last in, first fired, seniority. You know what? I believe in tenure, but it has gone out of hand in K through 12. It takes 18 months in practice. Even the university system, it takes 7 years. So 18 months, essentially, 2 years on the books, to gain permanent status in California. That's got to change. When I tried passing incentive pay in California schools, and I limited it, I even said it could be collectively bargained between the union and the school district. Incentive pay to go in the lowest performing schools, including special education, to give bonus pay to those teachers who, quite frankly, are willing and capable to work with kids at school sites where, quite frankly, other teachers just don't want to go. You know what CTA said? No. They fought it every step of the way. Thankfully, United Teachers of Los Angeles, which is the teachers in LA, they broke from CTA and said, you know what, my God, we can do this. So at least on that one there was there. The parent trigger law. I'm glad to hear the discussion. I'm looking more favorably at not just parent involvement, but parent rights to have a seat at the table and transform it. But at the time, it was just no. Open enrollment, no. So all of these things, trying to drop the firewall which exists in the California Code, which would prevent California from looking at teacher performance and doing a link to student outcomes, it was just no. So I think that, you know, the experience of serving in Sacramento, looking at the domination of political interests, and that's why I did, as a Democrat, as a liberal, as a union member, support Proposition 32 because until we break the special money ties that run the state of California, as Terry said, we're going to be here 30 years from now. This is going to take legislative reform, judicial reform, political campaign finance reform. It's going to take people standing up, regardless of which political spectrum we come from, and just saying, we're sick and tired of a failed education system. It's time for a change. It's half the state budget of the state of California. And it's contributing to the biggest prison system in this nation. If we do not educate, we will incarcerate, and if we don't change this system and give parents real choice to vote with their feet, then you know what? You can imagine the future of the great state of California.
Well, I'll tell you right off the bat, I share the Senator's urgency. Something's got to get done, and it's got to get done soon. But I would remind us, we're not building surfboards. You know, so the continual analogy to the business world and what's good for business, I think we got to be a little critical of that. We're talking about educating kids. We're talking about the heart connection between a teacher and a student. And you know what I mean. If you've been in a classroom, forget the classroom. If you ever learned anything from anybody, you know that there is a human part of it. And we got to figure out a way to move this system forward and to do it thoughtfully. But let's not forget that it is people coming together, first thing. This idea of throwing more money into a bad situation. If you throw more money into a situation and all you do is put the money there, you've done a disservice to the kids, to the people who work in that school, and a disservice to the community. And I think it's unfortunate that Mr. Sand had to be working in a school where they didn't have that kind of connection. But that's not the story of all QEIA schools. That's the story of the school he was in. We know, and you know, that if you bring people together and you spend the time necessary to be thoughtful about what it is you're trying to get done, and you work together not only with the faculty, but with management and with the community, and you come together with a plan, you can do the right thing and you can get things done, you can increase learning environments for kids. That is a fact, and we've seen it happen. I got to talk just a little bit about this parent trigger issue, okay? And absolutely true. We opposed it from the very beginning. And we still oppose the idea. Because here's what happens operationally in a community. I mean, I've never been there. I've just talked to the parents who signed a petition because somebody approached them and said, hey, sign this petition. We're going to get new books for the library. And they signed. Or sign this petition. We're going to paint the school. It's going to be so exciting. And they signed. And they found out what they signed was a thing that was going to change their school and move their faculty out. And I would imagine in some places that's actually a pretty good idea. But in some places it's awful. And one of the problems we have with this idea is if you're really trying to bring parents together, why not have some open town hall forums? Bring people together and say, look, this is what we're trying to do, and this is the way it's going to go, and these are what the 4 different options are. And you're going to be able to choose one at 50%. That's not the way this thing is working out in California. And I don't know what's happening in Texas, but I know when we find a couple people that are upset in the district and the parent trigger folks find out, or the parent revolution folks find out, all of a sudden you got 7 or 8 people moving into the community and renting a house and organizing out of that house and going into the community and saying whatever you got to say to get a petition signed. And we said, you know, is that really the best way to organize? I mean, really, if what you're trying to do is bring people together. Incredible. And in terms of getting rid of a teacher, like, I think 18 months is a little short. But you need to understand, for 18 months, a teacher is an at-will employee in a school district. And a building principal or an evaluator, what that means is you don't need an excuse You don't need a reason to say you're not coming back. All you have to have is some opportunity to watch the teacher. And part of the predicament we have with teacher evaluation is we got a system that's kind of broken. And it needs to get fixed. And the California Teachers Association is committed to doing something about that. But it's going to have to be thoughtful. And it's going to have to engage the practitioners. Enough of it.
Okay, well, it's sort of unfortunate that everybody's piling on Dean. But, I mean, what else can I do, right? I am, but I think it's important to emphasize, I always do this in my classes as well, that, in the end, it might seem weird to say this, but it's not really about people. In my view, it doesn't make any difference who the president of the CTA is. Dean is here, he's the president of the CTA, but it didn't have to be him, it could have been somebody else. The thing is that it's not about Dean. It's about the fact that unions have an interest in jobs. Unions are about jobs. Now this doesn't mean that unions are bad, they just are what they are, right? There are lots of special interest groups out there, and unions are a special interest group that people join because they want their jobs protected. And that's what unions do. And it doesn't matter who the president is, or the vice president, or anybody else. Because basically, they do the same kinds of things. They protect jobs. Right? Okay. So, what's important, I think, always, is to focus not on what people say, but on what they do, what their organizations do. Right? And so, Dean has talked a lot about coming together, about people coming together. Okay, what does that really mean? Right? I'm willing to believe that he really believes this is an important thing, and we all believe that. Collaboration is good, cooperation is good. What does it really mean in politics? What it means is that if you have to collaborate, and the unions are part of the collaboration, then they're going to have a veto over everything that happens. Okay, so if you try to do something that they don't like, for instance, exercising a parent trigger, they will stop it. Because it's threatening to jobs. They don't want a school to leave the regular public school system and take money and jobs. Right? They're opposed to charter schools. They're opposed to the parent trigger. They're opposed to vouchers. Why? Jobs. And why is that? It's not because they're bad, it's because that's their job. That's their job. They are in the business of protecting jobs. It's totally predictable. This is not, from their standpoint, it sounds terrible to say, they're an interest group. And their job is to protect jobs. And it turns out that those interests often come into conflict with the best interests of children. That is... Okay, so another point that he made, which I think is a perfectly reasonable one, is that, we should do everything we can to reform the regular public schools and get parents involved and so on, and try to make every school as good as they can possibly be, and so on. Well, yeah, we've been trying to do that for 30 years, right? There's something wrong here because it's not happening, right? So, okay, continue that. I think this is great. We should just continue that, but parents should have options, right? So, if they're trying to improve the regular public schools, but parents say, I don't think you guys are doing a very good job. I would like to go to this other school over here, this charter school. Fantastic, right? So they can improve their public schools as much as they want. But if parents have options and can leave, that changes everything. Right? So what we need, I think, is a serious school choice system that gives parents options to the regular public schools. Okay, so finally, when it comes to the money issue, I think this is a red herring. We are spending a fortune, really, on the public schools. It's taking a huge percentage of the California budget. The real problem is, and has always been, that a lot of the money gets wasted. You know, so for instance, how do we pay teachers? Well, it has nothing to do with their performance. Who ever thought of this? Who thinks this is a good idea, right? So you pay teachers according to their seniority, which has nothing to do with how good they are in the classroom, and you pay them extra for master's degrees, which has nothing to do with how much students learn. It's been demonstrated over and over again. So why do they do that? They're wasting tons of money every year, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. When it comes to, say, layoff situations, well, that's a situation where it's an opportunity to lay off the least productive teachers. Do they do that? No. They just lay them off based on reverse seniority, and if there are young teachers who are fantastic in the classroom, they get fired. Okay, is this a good way to spend money? No. So it's really obvious that a lot of the money is getting wasted. This is not a money problem, it's an organization problem, and what we need is a system that allows us to organize the schools in the most productive ways, and the unions won't let us do that.
Well, this brings us to our question and answer part of the program. And we have ushers available to pass out cards for you to write your questions. But in the meantime, while they're doing that, I'd like to take this opportunity to present to our panelists a certificate expressing our appreciation for their participation, taking the time out of their busy lives to come and spend some time with us.
Are you ready for questions?
Yes, I believe so.
First question is for Terry Moe.